Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. So I have now seen Captain Marvel twice in theaters. I saw it on opening night. Well, I mean preview night. I think it's called preview night. I think Friday night's opening night. I saw it on preview night. At 7:30 in 3D. And then I saw it again the next day. Also in 3D. On opening day. So I just have a few additional thoughts to add in about this movie. So I want to do a brief episode here, not a 30-minute review. It's only because the movie's been out for like 5 days, if that, and I don't want to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it. So if you're coming here, you know there are spoilers based on the title. Beware of spoilers. So let's very quickly cover some of this. I also wanted to talk about something else at the end of the episode, but that'll be the end of the episode. It's not anything related to anything else that's out right now. So, let's jump right in with this. So, number one of the things I noticed the second time that I didn't notice the first time was Stan Lee's cameo. This is not really a spoiler, but he in the scene that you see on in the trailers where she's on the train and she punches the old lady in the face. In that scene, that's where Stan Lee's cameo is. He's on the train, he's reading the scripts from Mallrats, which I thought was pretty cute to do. It was one of his first appearances in a movie. I thought that was a cool thing to do. Then there was also a few other things going forward from the larger experience. I did notice it was just the first theater that was dark. The second theater, it was a little bit brighter, so it's probably just the screen settings or the projector settings at the first theater that was the issue. It's not so much a darkness issue with the entire movie. It was just the theater that I saw it in. It was too dark. But the second theater was a lot cleaner, a lot the visuals were a lot easier to see. So a lot more of the movie was easier to actually take in. That's number two. Number three, I think we see the origins here of how Thanos finds out the Infinity Stones are on Earth. It'd be interesting to see if we can get somewhere where they explain how he knows the Eye of Agamotto is on Earth. Because he does say in Infinity War, which I rewatched 2 days ago, that he does say in it there are two Infinity Stones on Earth. I'd like to know how he found out that the Eye of Agamotto is on Earth. But we see how he knows the Tesseract is there because Ronan was there. Ronan works for Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy. So we see the origins of how some of the characters in Thanos' circle are starting to get knowledge that the Infinity Stones exist and are something worth exploiting. Also, it's worth noting that if anyone's saying that Carol's not the most powerful Marvel hero so far, I don't think that... I think that the problem is Vision is someone who might be considered in the same conversation, as well as Scarlet Witch, because their powers all come from Infinity Stones. But I don't think there's any other Marvel hero whose power comes from the Infinity Stone in the same way. It's like Wanda's comes from hers was awakened by the Mind Stone. Vision is vibranium mixed with the Mind Stone. I don't think that there's any other character whose power is purely the power of the Infinity Stone, just as radiation that they're using, in the same way that Thanos is shooting blasts of pure power from the Power Stone at Tony, and he's just tanking it with a shield. I don't think there's anyone who can do that besides Carol, who's just using pure blasts from pure blasts of energy that came from radiation mined from the Tesseract. I think that her binary form, it gives her the power of the pure energy of the Space Stone, which is also worth noting. Why she might be a good use against that. I think I said that the first time, is that her power comes from an Infinity Stone where no one else's does. Which means that there are now two characters who are bound to the gauntlet. That's number two. Number three, I feel like there's something else I wanted to cover. I really don't feel like that was it. I feel like there were other things. I love the soundtrack. I think I addressed that the first time, but the soundtrack is really, really good. I like this trend recently of using licensed music, in movies, and I feel like that's they did it very well here too, which maybe Nicole Perlman had something to do with because of her involvement in the movie. I noticed her name in the credits. She was also on Guardians and Guardians. I think just the first Guardians. She was not on Guardians too. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I like that Ronan is there because it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of like in The Hobbit where it's like, why is Legolas there? And it's like, well, there's no reason why he wouldn't be there. And that's kind of the same thought process with Ronan. It's like there's no reason why he wouldn't be there. And we get some background, cursory background, but it's background nonetheless on what the accusers are and what their purpose is. And I like how I think that's one of the most important things is that we see her tank through the ship that took the entire Nova Corps to take down, which was the one from Guardians of the Galaxy, the Dark Aster. It's like a proto Dark Aster, and she takes it down herself, which is a good way. It's kind of like establishing a power level where it's like, if you look at Dragon Ball Z, which is probably one of the most famous shows with power levels, what they do to start out, whenever they introduce a new character, they'll use a previous character and have them beat a previous character who we have an established power level for. So, we have, in the beginning, we have, after Goku fights Vegeta, Vegeta goes to Namek, and then he gets his ass kicked by, 2 aliens. And it's like, yeah, the point of that is to show that these guys are stronger than him. And it's kind of the same thing where they use that to show that she is, how strong she is compared to everyone else. Also, how many other people can tank an entire alien fleet? I don't think there's any other hero who can do that as of right now. So that hands down makes her most powerful. Probably her and Thor are the 2 most powerful at this point. As long as Thor's going into full god mode and she's in binary, that'd be a fun fight to watch. But yeah, I think we'll wrap up there for today with Captain Marvel talk. Again, if you haven't seen it yet at this point, it did 150 something million, putting it in the top 20 all-time openings domestically. And it's like the second best opening all-time for a comic book property. So if you haven't seen it already, which I thought, based on just your statistics, if you're listening to this podcast and you've heard my first review, and if you still are on the fence, absolutely go see it. It's definitely worth seeing it in 3D. It's just so fun to watch. And I saw someone on Twitter say a lot of the issues, I think it was Scott Wampler, a lot of the issues he had the first time went away the second time, and I completely agree with him. Where it's like, the first time you're being overly critical of the movie because you're trying to figure out the plot, but then once you know the plot, you can either nitpick or you can not nitpick, depending on what happens. But once you know what's coming, it makes the movie a different experience. And I think that everyone should see a movie twice before rendering an opinion on it. I say, having rendered an opinion on it about 5 minutes after seeing it once. But definitely go see this movie. Definitely worth your time. And now the second thing. If you listen to 30-minute reviews, I briefly addressed this. If you listen to the podcast on Spreaker, which is where we host the podcast, you will notice that we have a large array of shows on our network. We have 30-minute reviews where we discuss movie news, entertainment news, television, movies, video games, all that kind of good stuff. We have Beware of Spoilers, which you're listening to right now, where we discuss new release movies and sometimes video games that have just come out that have spoiler-centric plots, like we talked about with Kingdom Hearts 3. So that's what this is. We have Expand Your Collection, which I haven't done in a few months because it's one of those things that's very intensive in information gathering and it's time-consuming, and I will get back to doing it, but it's about what sales are going on to get more things. It's a shopping podcast. We have Unofficial Commentary by The Unqualified, which is a political podcast, also hosted by me. That's 4. We have a 5th that I have started a page for, put up a very quick description of, put up a name, figured out a category. It's going to be a fun one. It's a fiction podcast. It's called Case Files of a Vigilante. It's going to be functionally a comic book issued by podcast. We're going to follow a vigilante as he comes to terms with what he's doing and who he is. And I hope to have a quote-unquote 0 issue up by the end of March. But it's a lot of... I'm learning a lot about production on this one, whereas like typically when I do this or when I'm doing any other podcast, I just turn the mic on and I just start recording, which is what I'm doing now. I started it up. I have quick notes, but I don't really script it or anything like that. This new one is scripted. This new one is performed almost entirely by me, and it's going to be. And I'm because it's performed almost entirely by me, I need to learn how to adjust voices and things like that. So that way, it sounds like I'm being multiple people, and it's going to be a learning experience for everyone as we figure out what's going on with this. The Zero issue is going to be hopefully by the end of March. If not the end of April, because I want to get this out because it does tie into the book I have coming out in June, Swan Song, which comes out June 11th. And I want to make sure that we are, I wanted to tie in, but if it can't, it can't. If it'll tie in time for Duet, which will come out next year. So that'll be a cool thing if we can get that working, at some point sooner rather than later. So yeah, I'm assuming that let's say March 31st will be the first episode. I'll try to make it a regular release schedule. It's going to work in seasons, with varying arcs. The first arc is going to be an origin arc, obviously, leading into his first confrontation with a real, overriding villain for a long time. One of my favorites that I enjoy writing for. And we'll see from there. So yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. And look out for more news. You can follow me on Twitter at AdamTaylor792. You can follow the show right now. It shares a Twitter account with the rest of the network at 30min Review. You can follow Case Files of Vigilante at Vigilante Case Files. They all have Twitter accounts, all doing roughly the same thing. So yeah, we'll be back next week with probably another movie. I gotta look at what's coming out this week. But we'll be back with another episode sooner rather than later. Here, unofficial commentary by Unqualified. I'll have another episode later in the week. There's no shortage of things to comment on this week. Like, holy crap. And then, 30-minute reviews. I'm going to do, my pitch for how to do a Flash movie, which I briefly tweeted about the other night, but I'm going to do that probably tomorrow evening. So we will have a great rest of the week.